Hello and welcome. I'm James A. Zimoha. You're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. The U.S. and Iran exchanged fresh missiles and drone strikes, jeopardizing a new ceasefire agreement. The United States hosts a fourth round of peace talks with Israel and Lebanon. And the UN Secretary General condemns Russia after a deadly attack on Ukraine left at least 23 people dead. A fragile ceasefire between Israel, Iran, and the United States is undergoing pressure after fresh missile and drone attacks across the Gulf. While most of the projectiles were intercepted, the latest exchange highlights how far both sides remain from turning a temporary truce into a lasting agreement. Here's more.
Gulf tensions escalated sharply on Wednesday as Iranian missiles and drones targeted sites linked to U.S. interests across the region. U.S. Central Command said 2 missiles fired toward Kuwait fell short or broke apart in flight, while 3 missiles heading for Bahrain were intercepted. Several other ballistic missiles aimed at regional targets also failed. CENTCOM said U.S. forces downed Iranian drones targeting civilian ships in Gulf waters and American forces in Kuwait. It also carried out strikes on Iran's Qeshm Island near the Strait of Hormuz after what it described as attempted Iranian missile and drone attacks. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had targeted the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, along with an airbase and helicopters in another regional country. The IRGC said the attacks were a response to a U.S. strike on a communications tower south of Qeshm. The latest escalation lifted oil prices by more than 1% in early trading. It comes more than 3 months after the initial U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, with the conflict still locked in a stalemate under a fragile ceasefire, and the Strait of Hormuz largely closed to maritime traffic. Although Washington and Tehran said last week they had reached a tentative agreement to end the war, the deal has not been finalized. Iranian media report there has been no contact with the United States for several days, while President Donald Trump says negotiations are continuing. The IRGC says its forces remain on the highest level of alert and insists Iran's military strength and control of the Strait of Hormuz remain intact.
Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it has targeted the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain in response to what Tehran describes as a U.S. airstrike on a communications tower on Qeshm Island. The development comes as diplomatic efforts continue to seek a breakthrough in talks between Tehran and Washington. Our correspondent, Turaj Shirelilu, has more.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said on Wednesday that it launched missile and drone strikes against the headquarters of the U.S. 5th Fleet in Bahrain and a U.S. military airbase in the Persian Gulf region. The IRGC said the attacks were carried out in response to what it described as a U.S. airstrike on a telecommunications facility on Iran's Qeshm Island near the Strait of Hormuz late Tuesday. According to a statement carried by Iranian media, the IRGC also targeted a tanker it said was linked to the United States and Israel, describing the move as retaliation for an earlier attack on an Iranian tanker in the strategic waterway connecting the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The latest exchange follows a series of incidents involving Iranian and U.S. forces in the region, despite ongoing efforts to maintain a fragile ceasefire. On Monday, the IRGC Navy said it struck a cargo vessel after an Iranian freighter came under attack in the Sea of Oman. While Iranian military officials have repeatedly warned they would respond to attacks by targeting U.S. military facilities in the region, diplomatic efforts have continued in parallel. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has held a number of calls with regional and international counterparts, including officials from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Belgium, France, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkey, aimed at reducing tensions and supporting negotiations for a broader ceasefire agreement. Pakistani military chief Field Marshal Asim Munir has also been involved in mediation efforts, according to Iranian officials. Turaj Shirelilu reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned Russia following an attack on Ukraine that killed at least 23 people and wounded more than 100 others on Tuesday. The strikes hit several cities, including Kiev and Dnipro. They follow warnings from Moscow that it would systematically target the Ukrainian capital after a drone struck a dormitory in Russia-held Lugansk, an attack Kiev denies. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for an immediate de-escalation leading to an unconditional ceasefire.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the latest overnight large-scale missile and drone attacks by the armed forces of the Russian Federation on Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv, Dnipro, and Kharkiv. Once again, we emphasize that attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructures are prohibited under international humanitarian law and must end immediately. We also reiterate the Secretary General's urgent appeal for immediate de-escalation, leading to a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire in this conflict.
Now, following a partial ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, representatives from both sides have met for talks in Washington. The meeting comes amid continued reports of hostilities between the neighboring countries. Here's more.
Representatives from Lebanon and Israel met at the U.S. Department of State on Tuesday for the first session of a two-day round of negotiations. Following the meeting, the United States said progress had been made in the discussions. The talks come amid escalating tensions between the two neighbours who have been engaged in a 3-month war. Israel continued its attacks in southern Lebanon on Tuesday, but did not strike Beirut following a partial ceasefire agreement with the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah. The Israeli military also said it had intercepted 2 projectiles fired into northern Israel. A Lebanese official said the talks in Washington would explore ways to strengthen the fragile ceasefire, possibly through a phased approach. According to the official, the discussions could lead to the establishment of pilot zones, geographic areas where hostilities would cease, Israeli troops would withdraw, and Lebanese soldiers would be deployed. Meanwhile, a United Nations peacekeeper vehicle convoy was seen near the Israel-Lebanon border on Tuesday, while an Israeli military presence remained in the area. The developments come after UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said peacekeepers would be needed in Lebanon after the current mission's mandate expires at the end of the year.
Now, a new diplomatic push is underway to prevent the Lebanon conflict from triggering a wider regional crisis, but fighting on the ground continues to complicate those efforts. Our correspondent Tony Waterman has more.
This is the 4th round of negotiations between Israel and Lebanon since April, this time at the ambassador level, with Tuesday's talks lasting about 7 hours at the State Department here in Washington. The talks are coming after weeks of escalating violence between Israeli forces and Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon, despite a U.S. brokered ceasefire that was extended by 45 days just last month. A senior Lebanese official telling Reuters that the 2 days of talks in Washington would explore ways to reinforce that ceasefire, possibly through phased approaches. According to Reuters, this could include so-called pilot zones, these carved-out blocks of land where the hostilities would stop, Israeli troops would withdraw, replaced by Lebanese soldiers, and gradually this would spread across Lebanon, block by block, until there was a nationwide ceasefire. The biggest sticking point, though, remains Hezbollah, the Iran proxy operating in Lebanon and designated a terrorist group by the United States. It started this war in the days following the U.S. and Israel attacking Iran, but it is not part of these negotiations. Israel wants Hezbollah disarmed, but Lebanon is insisting that Israel first halt military operations and withdraw from the south of the country, where more than 1 1.2 million people have been displaced in the fighting. And that fighting continued on Tuesday morning, despite both Israel and Hezbollah promising President Trump on Monday that they would dial back the attacks. This conflict is now threatening to derail efforts to bring the war in Iran to an end. Iran's semi-official news agency Tansim on Monday reported that Tehran was suspending talks with the United States, citing Israel's ongoing attacks in Lebanon and really insisting that any peace deal with the United States include a ceasefire in Lebanon. That really kicked off a flurry of phone calls. President Trump demanding Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stop attacks on Beirut, which he did agree to, although he said operations in southern Lebanon will continue. There have been reports in U.S. media that President Trump angrily confronted Netanyahu over these threats to attack Beirut. Axios saying that Trump used expletives and called Netanyahu crazy. So really highlighting here this growing rift over how to end not just the war in southern Lebanon, but also in Iran, and the challenge that President Trump is facing when it comes to making sure this conflict doesn't spread across the Middle East. Tony Waterman for A News, Washington.
Hungary's new government is stepping up efforts to rebuild ties with both Kyiv and Brussels, and Prime Minister Peter Magyar says a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky could take place soon. Anita Sharma brings us more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where Hungarian Prime Minister Peter Magyar says he's ready to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as early as next week. But the talks hinge on resolving a years-long dispute over the rights of Hungary's ethnic minority in western Ukraine. If an agreement can be reached, the meeting would mark the highest level contact between Budapest and Kyiv since Magyar's landslide election victory ended Viktor Orban's 16-year rule in April. Speaking alongside German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin, Magyar said he's optimistic that negotiations can produce a breakthrough. The minority rights issue has long been one of the biggest obstacles to Hungary backing Ukraine's path toward EU membership. Now, Merz welcomed the improvement in relations between Budapest and Kyiv, but argued that the dispute should not be allowed to delay Ukraine's accession talks. The German Chancellor also praised Hungary's return to what he called democratic and European values. The two leaders discussed Ukraine's future relationship with the EU as Kyiv continues its push toward membership. The proposed meeting with Zelensky comes as Magyar intensifies efforts to bring Hungary back into the European mainstream after years of tensions with Brussels under Orban. Following talks with Merz in Berlin, Magyar is set to meet French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace today. The diplomatic push has already helped secure the release of 16.4 billion euros in previously frozen EU funds. If Hungary and Ukraine can resolve their differences over minority rights, a Magyar-Zelensky meeting would not only reset relations between the two neighbors, but also underscore Hungary's broader return to the heart of European politics. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Now, protests have erupted in Southampton following the death of an 18-year-old who died in handcuffs at the scene of a stabbing last December. Tributes line the streets for 18-year-old Henry Novak, but grief has turned to anger, with crowds marching to demand justice after recent police body cam footage shows a dying Henry Novak telling officers he had been stabbed and could not breathe, while an officer appears to doubt his injuries. His killer, Vikram Degwar, falsely claimed he was racially attacked. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says questions remain over whether that claim influenced police actions.
And I have seen the body.
Now, China and the United Kingdom have pledged to deepen ties and strengthen high-level communication following landmark talks in Beijing, the latest sign of a significant revival in relations between the two countries. Here's more.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper held the 11th China-UK Strategic Dialogue in Beijing. pledging to deepen cooperation and advance a long-term, consistent, comprehensive strategic partnership. The strategic dialogue is a high-level, regular dialogue mechanism established by the two governments in 2004. Speaking at the forum, Wang said that the consensus reached by the two leaders during British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to Beijing earlier this year has set bilateral ties on a new course, with exchanges and cooperation across various sectors having resumed and gradually returning to a normal track. Wang also called on both sides to implement that consensus, uphold the positioning of China-UK ties as a long-term and consistent comprehensive strategic partnership, and promote a more practical and tangible results. On the economic front, Wang said that China's 15th five-year plan is not only China's domestic development blueprint, but also an opportunity for the rest of the world, noting that it is highly aligned with the UK's modern industrial strategy. The two sides also exchanged views on key international and regional issues, including the situations in Iran and Ukraine. Cooper is on a 3-day visit to China. Both sides pledged to enhance high-level exchanges and deepen cooperation amid what Wang described as a turbulent and uncertain global landscape. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
Now, the FIFA World Cup trophy has made a stop in New York as preparations continue for the tournament. Fans gathered for a rare close-up of football's biggest prize, alongside one of the players who lifted the trophy in 2014.
The FIFA World Cup trophy was unveiled in New York as part of the Coca-Cola FIFA World Cup Trophy Tour, drawing fans, media and school children to the American Museum of Natural History. Germany's 2014 World Cup winner, Bastian Schweinsteiger, joined New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani for the event. One of the few people permitted to lift the trophy, Schweinsteiger held and kissed the trophy he lifted when Germany won the 2014 World Cup in Brazil.
Even now I got goosebumps because it brings back memories, and you know, it's not easy to win that trophy. It's every 4 years, so you don't have as a player so many chances to be able to win it and lift it. So I think for everyone who ever lifted that trophy, you actually want to repeat and you want to win it again.
Fans and school children gathered to see football's biggest prize up close as organisers brought the trophy to one of New York's best-known museums.
And when this trophy is hoisted into the air, they will see something that is all too rare in this world, something that people work their entire lives to achieve, even if for just a brief, fleeting moment. They will see greatness.
The New York and New Jersey area is set to host 8 matches, including the final, during the tournament from June 13th to July 19th, as the city prepares to welcome football's biggest event.
Torrential rain brought by a tropical storm hit Tokyo on Wednesday morning, with some rivers in central Tokyo overflowing. At least 16 people were injured and thousands left without power after Storm Tangmi blew through Okinawa on Monday. At least 700 domestic and international flights have also been grounded at 2 of Tokyo's airports, according to local media. Evacuation and landslide warnings have been issued for parts of Japan's eastern coastal region. All right, after the break, we'll discuss Russia's latest declaration that the war has entered a new paradigm, with Moscow warning that major attacks against Ukraine are likely to continue despite ongoing contacts with the United States. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, the Kremlin says the war in Ukraine has entered a different phase, one in which major military strikes are expected to continue and peace negotiations remain deadlocked. Meantime, Moscow insists that communication with Washington is ongoing. To discuss this, we're joined now by Gregory Matthew, political analyst, joining us from Stockholm. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, James. It's a pleasure.
Now, which track matters more right now to Russia, the military one or the diplomatic one?
I would say that right now the military track seems to be more important. Diplomacy is not definitely abandoned, but Moscow used military pressure. If to refer to what happened in Iran, I mean, it's not different. There is an increasing military pressure to come to the negotiation table with a power like we can stop this, but we want to demonstrate that we are militarily stronger. And this is a leverage for the negotiations. Uh, so for the Kremlin, it's important to show and to test also Washington here. And it's the battlefield remains the place where Russia believes it can create leverage.
Mm-hmm. Now, when Moscow says the war has entered a new paradigm, what exactly does that mean? And what is new?
In my opinion, nothing is much new here. From day one, it was bombs and attacks on Kiev, because we are speaking about the last event in Kiev, the last night in Kiev, and I would like to send my regards to all my friends living in Kiev right now. I mean, what is new is rhetoric. And let's come back to the origin of this new paradigm. Russia is considering that the bombing of the school in Lugansk is an unprecedented event that needs to be retaliated somehow. And so it gives them the right to escalate. What happened in Lugansk is a tragedy. When a child is dying, it's a tragedy. And Russia is now, let's say, using this argument to say, now we have all rights to escalate the situation. And in practice, it means diplomacy continues, but alongside with more and more intense military pressure.
Mm-hmm. Now, Russia insists Ukraine must withdraw from territories Moscow claims as its own. Is that a negotiating position or a condition designed never to be accepted?
It's both. Let's say, James, you have a house, and from tomorrow I will say, your house is mine. It's not yours anymore. And we come to the table of negotiation, but at the same time, I'm bombing the whole village to say, no, it's my house, it's not yours anymore. So for Moscow, this territory is theirs. For Kiev, it's unacceptable because according to international law, the recognized territory of Ukraine is sovereign, and there is no way for, no political way for Zelensky to accept any territory considered. So it's really a key point. And when you go to a negotiation, it's always good to come with unacceptable points for the other party. So the whole game of the negotiation is to come to a consensus.
Now, speaking about acceptable points, could it be now that Moscow no longer sees negotiations as a way to end the war, but rather as a way to manage the war while continuing it?
Yeah, I would say that's increasingly the logic of it. Moscow keeps contact open with Washington, but not necessarily because it is ready for compromise. And let's not forget that Moscow is talking to Washington not only about Ukraine, it is speaking to Washington about other topics and other situations around the planet. So talks can serve to reduce escalation risk. Washington is a nuclear power, Russia is a nuclear power, and there has been declaration from the beginning that Moscow is ready to escalate it at the nuclear level. So by doing this, the Kremlin is trying to influence U.S. decision-making and buy time while the military campaign continues. Now we are in a season where Russia is not gaining much more territory. It's square meters by square meter. It's even losing. I mean, Ukrainians are taking back some part of territory. So we are discussing for a few square kilometer at a price and at a cost that is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. Let's stay with the United States for a second here. The Kremlin continues speaking to Washington even while dismissing the peace process. Does that suggest Moscow believes the real negotiation is with the United States rather than Ukraine?
I think from the from the starting point, Moscow considers it's a proxy war against them, staged by the Americans, and Ukraine is a tool manipulated by the Americans to aggress or to pressure Russia. That's one element. The other element is that Vladimir Putin sees himself as the equal partner to Mr. Trump and to Xi Jinping. He wants to play in that category, in the Champions League of decision makers around the world. And therefore, for him, it's important to stay around the table with what he considers as his peers. For him, Mr. Zelensky is not really an interlocutor.
Now, let's move on to Russia. Recent polls show that shows growing support amongst Russians for peace negotiations. How much freedom now does the Kremlin actually have to prolong the war indefinitely?
Not indefinitely, because the economic of Russia, it's not very great. Despite now America lift sanctions against Russian oil because of the situation in the Middle East. But there are dozens of thousands of dead bodies coming back to Russia every month since the beginning of the war. And, the population, I'm not sure they are really much willing to continue this forever. And at some point, they would like to have a settlement and a way back to their what can be called normal life, because it has an impact in the Russian society for sure.
Mm-hmm. That was Gregory Matthew, political analyst, joining us from Stockholm. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, James. Have a good day.
All right, after the break, we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, an international conference addressing transnational repression in India has opened in Baku, Azerbaijan. Organized by the Baku Initiative Group, the event focuses on the 1984 Amistar events, an alleged state-led systematic persecution of ethnic and religious minorities, including Sikh and Dalit communities. Global experts, human rights advocates, and diaspora representatives from the U.S., U.K., and Europe are attending to push for coordinated legal protections and international oversight. Now, Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kopakidze is set to present his government's annual report to Parliament this week, and on paper it reads well: record tourism, longer life expectancy, a modernizing military, and 80% alignment with EU laws. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili has more.
The Georgian government's annual report presents a broad picture of progress across several sectors. According to the document, tourism revenue reached a record $4.7 billion. Healthcare coverage now extends to 95% of the population. The military is undergoing modernization under a long-term strategy through 2035, and around 80% of Georgian legislation has been aligned with EU standards. At the same time, the report acknowledges challenges in Georgia's relationship with the European Union. It notes that the EU has suspended the institutional mechanisms used to monitor Georgia's implementation of the association agreement, following the broader pause in the country's accession process amid disagreements over governance and democratic reforms. Despite this, the government continues to describe EU integration as a key foreign policy priority and says work on legislative alignment remains ongoing. The report also highlights Georgia's multi-vector foreign policy approach, emphasizing cooperation with the EU, NATO, and regional partners. Government officials describe this as a pragmatic strategy aimed at maintaining engagement across multiple directions, while critics argue it raises questions about the country's long-term geopolitical orientation. The report ultimately reflects a complex reality. Georgia continues to pursue reforms linked to European integration, while its formal EU accession process remains on hold. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, Turkey and Armenia are continuing efforts to improve relations with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan discussing the issue on a phone call. And see, the two leaders spoke about steps to normalize ties, including plans to launch direct trade. They also discussed regional issues, with Erdogan reaffirming Turkey's support for peace and stability in the region. Now, as Armenia moves closer to a crucial parliamentary election, newly released footage published by Minvel Politica is raising fresh questions about alliances that may be shaping the opposition behind the scenes. Report looks at allegations linking businessman Samvel Karapetyan to former President Robert Kocharian and what that could mean for Armenian political future. A News presents you the footage.
Это очень сильно, а вообще я понимаю, что Карапетян, он ценит очень высоко. 30% это он не может быть правительством. Вопрос, если у него уже есть какие-то договоры с другими партиями, чтобы его будет поддерживать.
Договоры с другими партиями есть, но они не фиксируются. Ну, смотрите, следующая сила, которая идет после Карапетяна, это второй президент Армении. Тоже уникальный человек, единственный человек мира, который был президентом сразу двух стран и президентом и премьер-министром двух стран.
Как?
Ну, он был и премьер-министром Нагорно-Карабахской республики, потом президентом. Потом приехал в Армению, был премьер-министром Армении и герой Первой Карабахской войны. В общем,
У Карапетяна, как зовут президента Карабаха?
Роберт Кочарян.
У них какие-то понимания, потому что у них тот же самый интерес. Оставьте меня в покое.
Нет. Ну, во-первых, они друзья. И вот, когда говорят друзья, вы понимаете, в Армении невозможно быть в бизнесе и не быть другом власти.
Одну вещь я не понял. Почему, что Карапетян и второй этот Карабах, они объединили силу, как одна сила.
Потому что Карабахский клан считается плохим, и мы у друг друга электорат не будет хвалить.
Официально не надо, но не официально.
Неофициально так и есть.
Скажите, вы сказали, что они очень хорошие друзья, и как они помогают друг другу?
Друзья в этом плане, во-первых, второй президент 8 лет был президентом Армении. До этого 4 года был президентом Карабаха. Самвел Саркисович, если память не изменяет, наверное, 300-400 только благотворительности делал тогда Карабаху и Армении. В Степанакерте самый большой современный медицинский центр, именно военной медицины, был построен за счет денег Ташира. И они просто по-человечески друг с другом как бы дружны. Скажу больше, когда второй президент сидел, залог, да, это называется, когда платишь, залог из выхода для тюрьмы, который составлял $2 миллиона, дал Самвел Карапетян. Так считаю.
У Карапетяна есть какое-то что-то, что он держит на последнюю минуту, что может влиять на выборы как-то?
Да. Ну, во-первых, есть несколько вариантов. Есть несколько вариантов развития событий. Есть даже вариант пойти по молдавскому пути, если пойдет Пашинян.
Это что молдавский путь?
Молдавский путь, это вот недавно были выборы в Молдове. Россия хотела повлиять на эти выборы, потому что очень много молдавцев было. Та партия, которую на нее ставила, ее просто не допустили к выборам. Даже в этом случае у нас есть шаги, которые...
Ну, Хапанян сказал, что он будет поддерживать церковь, да?
Обязательно. Вот это с этого начал, что он должен от церкви отстать. Он поддерживает ее и говорит, что она должна быть отдельно.
Что он обещает им, если он будет... Если он будет...
Автономия от государства. Раз.
Вот, цель церкви, чтобы он выбрал, чтобы его выбрали.
Наоборот, чтобы не было. Кого выбрали?
Кого?
Самвела выбрали Карапетяна, а не Пашиняна. Это цель церкви.
Да.
Чтобы отстали от церкви, чтобы церковь сама решала, какие ее реформы.
Церковь влияет на людей, чтобы они голосовали за Карпаняна.
Ну, скажу так, против Пашиняна. Против.
Now, Kazakhstan is looking to attract more investment from Hong Kong as it seeks to strengthen its role as a regional business hub. During a visit by Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee, the two sides discussed new projects, financial cooperation and deeper economic ties. Fariza Kalemoziner has more.
Kazakhstan is positioning itself as a gateway to Central Asia for Hong Kong investors. That was the key message from talks in Astana between Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Economy Sirik Jumangarin and Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee, who arrived in the Kazakh capital. More than 70 representatives of major companies and financial institutions from 17 provinces and regions of China joined the visit. The discussions focused on expanding investment cooperation and launching new joint projects. Kazakhstan proposed opportunities across a range of sectors, from agribusiness to industrial processing and manufacturing. According to the government, the potential value of projects currently under consideration exceeds $100 billion. Financial cooperation was also high on the agenda. Kazakhstan said it's ready to attract Hong Kong capital through debt instruments issued on the Chinese and Hong Kong markets, as well as through the creation of joint investment funds. The national holding company Baytarek has signaled its readiness to participate as a financial partner and co-investor. The visit comes as economic ties between Kazakhstan and Hong Kong continue to grow. Trade turnover reached $180 million in 2025, up nearly 40% from the previous year. 4 intergovernmental memorandums and 42 commercial agreements were signed during the visit, covering investment and business cooperation. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Central Asia's biggest environmental gathering is underway in Samarkand, bringing together thousands of delegates focused on climate, water and sustainability. The exhibition is also driving new regional partnerships. Our correspondent, Savil Rajapova, has the details.
The International Environmental Exhibition Eco-Expo Central Asia 2026 has officially opened in Samarkand. Organizers expect around 10,000 local and international participants this year. More than 68 pavilions are showcasing environmental technologies, green products and innovative solutions, while over 50 forums, presentations and side events are being held throughout the exhibition.
Our Central Asian region must unite and is already uniting in matters of ecology and environmental protection. As we know, environmental challenges do not recognize borders, which means that no country can solve them alone.
One of the key outcomes of the first day came during a discussion dedicated to the Aral Sea region. The National Committee on Ecology and Climate Change, the Ministry of Water Resources and the Ministry of Agriculture signed a concept plan for integrated water resource management in the lower Amu Darya basin. The document aims to improve water efficiency, strengthen environmental sustainability and support climate adaptation efforts in the region.
Like if we take Central Asia, the intensity of this heating or the climate change is double the global trends. So that's why we live in an arid region We have some intensifying factors like RLC, sun and dust storms. It is a big issue, but
Another major side event marked the launch of a new Global Environment Facility funded project aimed at establishing Uzbekistan's national biosafety system in line with the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. The initiative is expected to strengthen biodiversity protection and improve the country's environmental governance framework.
And we're actually inaugurating or launching a big regional project this week with Uzbekistan and all of its Central Asian neighbors, helping to tackle the common challenges associated with land and water management in the Sirdarya and the Amu Darya river basins.
The exhibition also featured discussions on Uzbek-Japanese cooperation in climate resilience, water management and green hydrogen technologies, as well as the presentation of Uzbekistan's fourth Environmental Performance Review, prepared by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. EcoExpo Central Asia 2026 is expected to strengthen international environmental partnerships, attract investment into green projects, and support sustainable development initiatives across the region. It is Cyril Rajab reporting from Samarkand, Uzbekistan, A News.
All right, after the break, we'll discuss the 8th Global Environmental Assembly in Samarkand and its impact on economic security, regional stability and long-term development in Central Asia. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, leaders, policymakers and environmental experts are gathering in Samarkand for the 8th Global Environmental Assembly against a backdrop of mounting environmental pressures across Central Asia. Join us now to discuss this is Aygul Gulazadeh, support specialist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, joining us from Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting. This is very exciting week for us because we are discussing one of the major problems that each and every country faces these days. And this is the environmental problems, which include not only the climate change, but others like biodiversity loss, land degradation, or water scarcity, and many others. Thank you again.
Yeah, great. Now, when people hear environmental summit, they often think about climate targets and declarations. What is the bigger issue in Central Asia right now?
The bigger, it's very difficult to mention one big issue, but I should say that they are very interrelated, and each one interlinks with others and has many effects, negative effects on food security, livelihoods, or public health, or economic opportunities of each country. So the GEF Assembly and such forums highlight that we need to find the environmental solutions that serve to the development of each country, so that they can come together to tackle such issues. The bigger issue in terms of the Central Asia, one of the bigger issue can be the water security, water scarcity, like in many other regions, including the Central Asia ones, because water is in the nexus of many aspects of the environment. It's the resource for the agriculture, it's resource for the biodiversity, forests, and many others. So if I need to mention one, water can be one of the main challenges. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is environmental sustainability. Because through the environmental sustainability, we can also ensure the human well-being and development in the economic resilience, as well as many other problems we have right now.
All right. Aygul, I want to get your opinion on this. How do you see the relationship between environmental security and national security today?
Um, I think we should acknowledge that no single country or no single institution can address these environmental challenges, and each this national security or the international level of initiatives, they serve to each other, so they are integral. So we need, of course, the national leadership remains essential, but also the environmental challenges require cooperation at multiple scales, meaning that we need to cooperate together to increase the impact of the national efforts. For example, environmental degradation. This affects water availability, this affects agricultural productivity, and these issues are the matter directly to the national resilience, because if we look at droughts, if we look at the land degradation, they are not only environmental concerns, but also problem for communities, problem for livelihoods, and also markets, food systems. This is why investments in ecosystem restoration or sustainable land management, climate resilience, these all should be viewed as investments in long-term stability and resilience. So my answer to your question would be that the connection is clear. So, and it's becoming, it's increasing more and more.
Now, based on what you've just said, how important is it for the countries in Central Asia to cooperate in tackling these challenges?
As I said, the environmental challenges do not stay within a border. Any environmental challenge that we have right now in the world, they do go beyond the borders, and sometimes it's not sometimes, but in many cases it's not under the control of a single country or single community. Therefore, having such a cooperation like we are having experiencing this week with the Jeff Assembly, which is hosted by the right now by government of Uzbekistan, is a powerful example that we can show that the united actions, united efforts can really serve to the common interest and shared benefits. This can bring countries together, including Central Asia, because the environmental challenges that we have across the borders, these are shared. For example, we have shared water sheds, we have shared the droughts or land degradation. They go across the areas that, as I said, it is not limited in an area. Therefore, the cooperation is inevitable.
Yes. Now, for years, environmental discussions were often seen as long-term concerns. What has changed now to make them immediate policy priorities?
Yes, this is true that for many years, the environmental discussions have been serving to the, as has been seen as a platform where we share the knowledge, we share the actions that have been taken so far. But in the recent years, with such funding, with such efforts that we are sharing in the forums, we are sharing in the environmental related knowledge sharing platforms, this helps governments, not only the governments, but also other partners like international organizations, civil societies, or communities, or private sector to come together, to have the same view, to have the same understanding, and then put it in action through the policy level decisions. So bringing them up to the policy in order to have a higher level of arrangement, higher level of decisions, so that the challenge can be handled at every level, not only in the local level, not only at the lower level, but at each level, at regional level, even the global level. So therefore, I can respond this question and such.
All right. Now, finally, Aigul, what outcomes are you looking forward to get out of this event?
This event, as FAO, we have been in many productive sessions and meetings with different stakeholders, and also with the governments, with the representatives from each government entity that we are working with, as well as with the GEF as the donor, and with other agencies, GEF agencies as well. The key outcome that we are looking for as FAO is the solutions, transformative solutions that we can bring to the stage, and together with all these stakeholders. And as FAO, we believe that the most powerful opportunities for such solutions lies in the transformation of agri-food system. This is just one solution. Agri-food system, because they are deeply interconnected with all the major environmental challenges. They depend on healthy soils, they depend on clean water or biodiversity, forests. At the same time, the way that food is processed, the way that it's transferred, consumed, these all have a profound influence on the health of our planet, on the health of our people, and also their livelihoods. Therefore, agri-food system solutions are environmental solutions. So we increasingly recognize that they hold a key role in addressing some of our greatest environmental as well as social challenges.
Now, that was Aigul Gulazadeh, support specialist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, joining us from Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.